Hello, I'm Melissa Phillips, the Director of the Games Leadership Network and Academy, and welcome to another session of our Retrospective series. Today, I'm excited to share a talk by Alice Bowman titled How to Know When You're Done Cooking. And in this talk, Alice dives into the challenges of recognizing when it's the right time to take the next step in your career, whether that's moving into a leadership role, starting a new studio, or pursuing something entirely different. And this brings up a lot of questions around when is the right time to move into a leadership role in the games industry. And if you'd like to find out more about games leadership, then you can find us at www.gamesleadership.com. Over to Alice.
Thank you, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for coming, especially the people I know who've turned up to support me. It's good that you're here because you'll know how much of a mess I am when it comes to knowing how to move forward in your career and things like that. I am very inconsistent, I guess, in how I move forward very quickly, and then I need to slow down. I have a lot of big plans for the future that can change at a very rapid pace, which is why this subject was something I wanted to talk about. I think I find it really hard to know when I'm ready to take the next step or to get past any doubts I have about labeling myself a senior or a lead or ready to go and start my own business. But yeah, this talk is about how I've tried to get over that, and some things that have helped me and some things that haven't helped me. Um, I also was feeling self-conscious about just talking at you and was worried that it wouldn't be entertaining enough on its own. So I came up with a game to go along with this, which is cribbing off of my I guess, amusement with WikiHow articles. I find the pictures really funny and the article topics really stupid. So this one's a really simple one and not a particularly funny article, but the illustration for this one is from an article called How to Be a Great Cook. For each slide, there is an illustration. And if you want to play along, you can try and guess the topic of the article that the illustration goes with. Trust me, some of them you will not be able to get. Also, Jordan, who helped me with one of them, you're not allowed to guess that one. But otherwise, it's a free for all. So yeah, if you get bored or if you just want to play along, you can do that. So yeah, first of all, I was just going to give an introduction to who I am. I'm a senior product manager at Fusebox Games at the moment. I've been in the games industry for around 10 years now. Before I was in games, I was sort of completely not sure what I wanted to do with my life. And I flitted between a lot of different professions that I would try and sort of start out, training up to go into. Like ranged from wanting to be a doctor to wanting to be sort of a nursery teacher to wanting to be a theologist and learn Sanskrit. So it's been all over the place. But when I went into games, I found a lot of stability, which I think is why I find my personal development within games and like growing my career is something that is very important for me in my life, aside from just moving my career forward. There's always been an impatience to try and get to the next thing because it feels very fulfilling to find the thing that suits me in the place that I feel I belong, which is the games industry. So yeah, in my career, I've mostly been in mobile for that time. And I think staying in mobile has come from that same feeling of wanting familiarity and to feel that there is the chance to have mastery over the part of the industry I work in. I've gone from working as a level designer to being in narrative design, back to being a designer again. And a few years ago, I made the move into product, which was a decision for me because I want to start my own studio. I felt that a product role would be something where I would be able to learn more about how to operate a studio and how to make successful games as a studio lead from that role. So that was sort of a career move for me where I just felt that I could learn more on the job by doing that. There's been times in my career where I've moved from being passive participant, where my career has just happened to me, to being more active and working towards specific things and really trying to like level up my career. I think one of the big pivotal moments there is getting coaching from Games Leadership Network. So I wanted to shout that out specifically. That's how I've gotten to know Mel, and she mentioned the scholarship coaching that the network provides, and I was a recipient of some of that, which was massively helpful for just wanting to know where I'm going and why. And there's so many things in these slides where it's the kind of stuff that Mal can really support you with. So I wanted to shout that out, that she's probably much better at many of those things than I am in terms of giving advice on how to move forward with, mapping out your own journey or knowing what you want to do next. And yeah, my ultimate goal is starting my own mobile game studio. So that's the thing that I'm trying to work towards until I achieve it, and then I'll have to find a new ultimate goal. So yeah, I the first wiki how-to article, in case any of you have guessed internally, I'll tell you at the end of each slide. This one is how to pretend to be a mermaid at school. And in the image, she is reading 𝗕𝗄𝗰𝗲, which is a mermaid book. So yeah, just going into like the advice I would give. I think the first thing you need to do is understand what you want from your career, what the goal is, what you're trying to work towards. So for me, a way I had to do that is I have to always kind of challenge myself and have new input and try new things. So trying new skills, knowing I'm bad at them, but just having a go at things and new hobbies is quite important for me as a creative and as someone who is just moving forward in life, trying to work out what I want to do. I think the first time I encountered this as something you would do for self-development is when I was in university. In one of our modules, we had to sort of keep a diary on what we were reading and the shows we were watching and things like that, and talk about how that fed into our creative output. And so that was like a bit of a light switch moment for me, realizing that the things you do outside of your creative work feed into your creative work. And I try and like do a lot of things that aren't based in games in order to keep feeding into that and broaden my perspective. I think it's also really important to map out your own personal hierarchy of needs. I think, that beyond just the things that human beings need to survive, we all have slightly different priorities and slightly different things that we need from our day-to-day life and our longer term goals. So this was actually one of the many exercises that I did with Melissa when we were doing coaching, where I mapped out, what I was looking for in the next year or so, and what I felt I needed to feel like I was developing as a person. And I think it's a really useful exercise for anyone to do, to think about, the wants you have and then the needs you have, and sort of how you can stretch yourself, or how you might want to sort of like keep just deepening your knowledge of a smaller pool of skills instead. Again, with like that sort of self-awareness that can help with just knowing the right direction. For me, journaling is really big. Therapy is really big. I think, not everyone needs those tools specifically, but for me, I am someone who's quite anxious, and I'm prone to self-doubt without those tools. And so that can really help me with moving forward and finding confidence in the work I do, finding self-assurance in the plans I make, and also just knowing that I am on the right track with something. Understanding why you want to achieve a specific goal has been very useful for me. This was a question that completely stumped me in coaching when asked, why do I want to be a CEO? Why do I want to start my own company? What parts of those things are specifically important to me? I think it's, for me, it goes deeper than wanting to make money from that. I think it's probably not the most lucrative thing I'll do in my life. I think I'll probably be more likely to lose money or not make any money at all in that time. But it's about proving to myself that I can do that thing, and about sort of hitting what feels for me like a peak in self-development. So I think, it was really powerful for me to know those reasons, because it helped me understand the alternative things I could do instead to get those feelings. What routes are there where I can have that feeling and have that achievement? Because it doesn't have to be this, and this is probably not the easiest way to do it. But it allowed me to sort of assess those options and then decide, no, I do want to do this. Um, and the image here, which I find hilarious because it's someone just looking in a bin, is how to find treasure. That's the article. Yeah. Understand how to get there. So for me, I have spent the last few years being mentored by various people, and some of that is through mentorship programs, or coaching. But I think, there's been a mixture of organic relationships there and also relationships that have sort of been from some sort of system where you get paired up with someone. And they're really useful to have those kinds of relationships where you can ask someone, um, for advice and be really open to them about what it is you want. Um, for people who are in a situation where they have a relationship with their manager and you can sort of talk openly about what you want to do in the future and get support in doing that and learn from them. I think that's a really great way to try and develop yourself through your day-to-day work if your day-to-day work isn't part of your overall goal. I'm in a really fortunate position with that at the moment, where my boss is really supportive and has had a very similar journey to what he's doing now, that I would like to have. So I think it can be hugely useful to have that level of openness if you feel comfortable with doing that. I am a really big believer in a 5-year plan. I like to sort of map out where I think I'm going to be and how I want that development to go. Before this talk started, I was saying to Mel that my 5-year plan has been completely disproven over the last few months. There were things that I thought were going to happen in 5 years that have happened this year instead. And there were things that, I was hoping would happen sooner that are sort of being pushed out further away because life happens. You have to sort of be responsive to those things. But for me, it is a useful exercise to look at how I expect those things to happen and what stepping stones there are in between, because it can help me think about how I can use my time in the most useful way between now and then. It was one of the exercises that helped me decide to make a pivot into something that will ultimately help me at a more sort of operational top-down level in running a company. So I think that it can be a really useful tool to do that sort of thing. I had some really good advice from one of the, I can't remember her name, one of the general managers at Xbox did a talk, and she was giving some advice on how she does her own sort of like self-development. And one of the things that she does is she has a personal board of directors. Like, it's not an actual formalized thing, but she has in her mind, different people that she would go to for advice that she thinks of as her board of directors. And, they she sort of needs to represent different parts of her life on that. She'll usually have someone that she looks up to as a mentor at work, or it might be someone who's a bit more of a rival at work who challenges her and disagrees with her and is going to bring that perspective. There might be, her spouse is always like on that list, and other relatives that can feed in other perspectives. But I think it's really useful to have that variation where you're not just having one mentor or one person's opinion feeding into things, but you're getting well-rounded perspectives from people who are actually going to think differently about whatever problem you bring to them or whatever challenges you have. I think something that's been very useful for me is trying to find people who are effectively case studies of what I want to do. I have quite an analytical approach to trying to work out, the steps that I need to go forward in my career or the steps I need to go forward to achieve my goals. And I find it really useful to look at someone who is currently doing what I want to do in the future and trying to sort of like take apart their CV and see how have they gotten from here to there. It is really, it can be very misleading to do that because depending on when that person reached the role that you're trying to achieve, that might be a route to being a company founder, for instance, in my case, where that route's not available anymore. It's 10 years old and it's dated information. I think it can also allow us to sort of compare our journey too much to someone else's, but it can be useful for knowing what sort of hard skills can get you to where you want to go, and to sort of see patterns of success across multiple people who have successfully done what you're trying to achieve yourself. And in a similar vein, I like to sort of try and reverse engineer how I'll get from, seeing that successful end goal to, like filling in that knowledge from where I am now. One example for this is when I moved into product, I took a sort of selection of job adverts for product managers that were maybe a few steps more senior than I was at the time. And I took apart sort of like nice to haves and requirements for those adverts and made a checklist on how to make sure that I fitted the profile for all of those adverts in as quickly a space of time as I could, which ended up being really useful because at the time that I did that, I didn't think I had to work on my CV, but life does sort of throw you a curveball, and I did end up moving my job more quickly after doing that than I expected. So I think that really focusing on that personal development, even at times in your life when you actually feel like you're quite far away from making the next step, it can still be really rewarding to do that. I think it's also important to set your pace though. So, oh, sorry, I didn't say which one the thing was. This one is so there's one article which is how to convince your parents to let you have a thong. And this one is the follow-up article, which is how to get a thong without your parents knowing. And I just really love the evil smile she has. Um, and the fact that it's like follow-up to that. So next, I'd say it's really important to set your pace. I think this is from the book Radical Candor, this concept of rock stars versus superstars, but it's really stuck in my head. So the idea is that you have some people who are superstars, who are sort of like bursting to go forward to the next step in their career. They're working at a level above what they're at because they are just chomping at the bit to try and get to the next step. Then you have rock stars who are just working at the level that they're at. They're very reliable and steady, and their work is quite consistent because of that. And the author is sort of talking about different times in her life when she's moved between being a rock star and a superstar, and how her personal life has had to sort of has had different requirements basically from what she's needed from work and what her relationship has been to it. I think that really resonates with me because I feel that it's quite difficult for me to switch gear. I always have this inclination to be trying to push forward without even necessarily mastering the things that are the level I'm at. I'm trying to learn the next set of things and being impatient. So I think it's for me at least useful to be mindful to sort of actively switch gear between those things and to spend the time trying to master the level I'm at and not just rush along to the next thing, and to enjoy being the level I'm at as well. I think it's important to focus on sustainable growth, which really the first few points kind of tie in with that. That's what sustainable growth means to me, at least. And making sure that you have time to kind of nourish other parts of your life as well, and not just focus on work-based personal development, which I do sometimes have quite a like one focus tunneling in sort of mindset. So it's good for me to try and like take a step back sometimes, remember the wider perspective. And then the last 2 points, I think it's important to sort of set your boundaries. So a good example that's come up in my career quite a few times is as I've gotten more senior, there have been times where what the company wants to happen or what the company's principles are might not be in line with what my principles are or what I think the right thing is. I think that's a friction that most people come up against as they become more senior. And it's helpful for me to know what my boundaries are and where I'm willing to push back. I'm sort of naturally, I can be quite a timid person. So to have that assertiveness to push back when I need to, it helps me to sort of like know that beforehand and to have sort of thought those things through and try and keep them consistent from company to company. Um, and then I think pushing your boundaries as well is valuable, not necessarily in the same sense in terms of, your work-life boundaries that you want to set or your principles, but just challenging yourself on those things. If you think that if you have a certain stance on the ethics of something, maybe just really examine why that is and try and take in opinions from other people as well. Um, there was another talk that I was part of with Jordan, who's also in the call here, at Pocket Gamer Helsinki last month, which was the ethics of mobile game design. And that was like a really good roundtable for just like pushing what our principles are and what we think is right, because we were all had slightly different perspectives on that, what we think is right and where we sort of set our hard limits. And so it was a really thought-provoking discussion to just kind of feed in other people's perspectives and get an idea of why that disagreement is there between some of us. So I think it's important to sort of like re-examine those things from time to time and just take in more information. Um, the article for this image is how to apologize to a cat. I don't know why these articles exist. Yeah. Next, I'm going to talk about stagnation versus burnout. So this is something I struggle with all the time where I'm changing. I tend to really quickly try and progress as much as I can, which often leads to burnout. And then when I'm burnt out, I can become stagnant for too long as a sort of like after effect from that. So for me personally, this is really about managing my work-life balance, having healthy routines, and making sure that I'm not pushing myself too hard at work. But I think it is different for everyone. All of these things, people will come up with different answers in terms of what they need to push themselves with or how they need to change their behavior. I think it's really important. And sort of going back to a few slides ago, things like journaling can help you with reflecting on that, or relying on your network and people you trust to weigh in on it. But just recognizing when your pace needs to change and taking that moment to like check in with yourself and see, do you feel like you're learning enough? Are you stimulated? Do you feel like you're learning too much and you're just really overstretched between all these different things? Something I do a lot of work, but it helps me to do in my personal life as well, is taking the time to map out impact versus effort for the different things I have going on. I refer to the hierarchy that I've made previously of what's important to me at the moment and what I'm thinking of achieving in the next 5 years. And then I look at the items of, how am I going to get to this? What's on my plate at the moment? What am I trying to do in the next few months? And I start to just plot out those things in terms of like how much impact do I think they'll have on my goals and how much effort will they take in terms of my mental capacity or how much time they take up. Um, for me, it's important to take time off, and for other people, it might be important to sort of go and do a lot of learning development things to go and feed into that stuff, like going to conferences, things like that. I think it's just important to do whatever it is that feeds your uh, personal development in the best way. For me, because I'm not very good at time management sometimes, I like to track time I spend on different things and then just block out time proportionately to what matters to me, because otherwise I can get caught up in something that I think isn't taking that long, but it sort of ends up being a sinkhole that takes up a load of time. Oh, and this one is how to sign a book, which is maybe too literal from the picture. Um, So I wanted to talk about dealing with imposter syndrome, even though it's not the main topic of the talk. I think it's something that affects a lot of people when they're trying to make that transition into leadership. And it's certainly been a huge struggle for me. I think even when I first went into Games Leadership Network and coaching from Mel, I actually, when I was applying for that, I thought, well, I'm not actually in a leadership role. And I think we discussed that in one of the coaching sessions. And Mel was like, no, you definitely are. But it's very difficult for me to know and to own that, because I find that I look at other people in leadership roles, particularly women in leadership roles, and I think I don't look how you do or conduct myself as you do. And I know that that means that some people won't see me as a leader because of that. And my career path has maybe been slightly different as well, or the timelines have been different. But there is a saying that I find comes up at a lot of roundtables about imposter syndrome, and it resonates a lot with me, which is that comparison is the thief of joy. I think you don't know what's going on behind the scenes for people. And I've known people who've mentored me, who've been in really high profile positions and have been um, power players in their fields. And they also deal with imposter syndrome or have doubts. And instead of sort of like making that letting that make them seem more vulnerable, in my perspective, it makes them seem more empathetic and self-aware. So I think it's okay to sort of recognize that aspect of yourself and to try and recenter into what you can do, and comparing to your own sort of self-development over the past however sort of longer time window you want to look at. Um, for me personally, I think authenticity is the most important way of building genuine relationships with people. And I kind of think that, networking is great and it's really important. But if it's not underpinned by genuine relationships, I think it won't serve you well. So I find it really worth having the time investment to like have a couple of really good relationships that I network on, rather than have a bunch of sort of low level, shallow relationships. Um, I also try and map out when I'm feeling imposter syndrome. If there's something specific I'm worried that people are going to find out I don't know how to do, I try and set myself a challenge to go and learn how to do that thing. Um, the age is a massive one for me, is that I just don't have a very good grasp on mathematics. And I have to do quite a lot of data analysis as part of my job. So I went out my way to go and buy statistics for dummies and have a lot of long conversations with data analysts where I would ask them to just keep explaining, which kind of leads into the next point, which is showing what you don't know. I think when I feel insecure, so much of that is around being afraid that people are going to find out that I don't know things. And if I just tell them instead, it gives me control over that situation, and it allows me to be the person who is opening that up for all of us to say, actually, all of us don't know things. There are things that all of us would like to ask that we haven't asked at times. When I was like new to my previous company and I was a product lead for the first time, I asked what I thought or what I worried might be a stupid question. And it turned out that most people in the room didn't know the answer and were just all nodding along. So I think it can be really powerful to sort of be willing to say, I have this question. I'm not sure if it's stupid, but I don't know this. And lastly, because there can be so much negative self-talk involved with having any doubts or having imposter syndrome, I think it's really important to mentor yourself as well. And for me, one of the things that has made me feel like a senior is mentoring other people and giving advice to other people. I've found that very like positive process that helps me feel more confident in myself. And I have had my therapist point out to me the very different way in which I help someone I mentor solve a problem versus how I treat myself when I have a problem. So I think it's really important to catch yourself on that. And when you're saying awful things to yourself or being really negative about what you can and can't do, to ask yourself to approach this as if you're mentoring someone and you're more senior than them. How would you help them figure out this problem? The article for this one is How to Make People Love You, which is, again, an amazing illustration. So this is my last slide. I wanted to just wrap it up with some questions and what I think is kind of underpinning all of this for me, which is, I think, holistic personal development and having like your goals be holistic with the rest of your life and tie together with the rest of your life is something that is very important for me. I think that's kind of how I've been able to be comfortable with my journey through games and my journey to try and get more senior and to get into a leadership role. I've had to think about it in like a way that's kind of been a bit divorced from like the money side of it or the power side of it. Those things are, also relevant. You want a specific job title, or you want to start a studio, or you want to make a certain salary. But it's been useful for me to kind of like take a step back from that and see, why do I want that, and what is the journey along the way going to be worth to me, and how can I get value from that and not just sort of load all the value towards the end goal. Um, just taking a step back and trying to ask myself what is going to make me happy has been really useful as well. And also, how does it fit in with the plans I have for the rest of my life and in my personal life? Um, so that was kind of the note I wanted to end it on, because I think coaching has been really useful for all of that stuff. I think they're really good questions to go away and think about. And the last how-to article here is how to buy nothing. And it's an article about just not spending money. So there you have it.